All right. So we live. Recorded from world famous Taylor Soul Food, Rock Hill, all right. Um, we got a guest, special guest, P. Might have heard of him prior in another episode. I mentioned him about the whole Nuremberg situation, and said he want to be in front of the screen. I don't know why, but he said it, so here we are. So I guess we could just start. I guess I met Pernell through a job, worked the same job, whatever the case is. Throughout life, I realized that that's how shit works. You should always go into opportunities with open mind. You might not like it as it appears, but you usually find something valuable from that experience. So we've had conversations, and he opened my mind to a lot of things, and shit kind of stuck with me, man. So we talk still on the regular, and yeah, man, he decided he want to jump on the joint, man. He got something to say, so here we are.
Peace.
Sanchez, you want to start this thing off?
No, go ahead, man. Just
kind of
give him a brief history of Pernell, right?
Yeah. Okay.
Mr. Pernell. We're gonna let him give a brief history of how he came into.
Time to finish what I started. It's a beautiful feeling to know I put my heart in. I'm all in. Picking up the broken pieces. I done had my share of lessons and no life a teacher. This beat be talking to my soul like it was a preacher. This for them late nights on the road, so turn up your speaker flow, call, turn up the heater. Bet on me, go all in. If I try and I fail, I'ma try it again. I won't stop until I win. Time to finish what I started. It's a beautiful feeling to know I put my heart in. I'm all in. Everything I wanna know, I'm really about to have it to it.
Tell them who you are.
Okay. Well, peace, family. Thank y'all for having me. My name is Pernell Spann Jr. I'm originally from New York City, born in the Bronx, grew up in Brooklyn, been down south for quite some time now. Kind of met Raleigh, like you mentioned earlier, through a job, chemical facility. And one thing I know is energy attracts each other, or it can push away. So before we said much to each other, he was training me on the job, and then I asked him a question one day about, hey, where you from? He sounded like he was from around my way, and it started there. My background, I am from New York City, but my roots is Savannah, Georgia on my mother's side, and Eufaula, Alabama on my father's side. So I grew up always knowing that my family are Indians, not black Indians, quote unquote, but Indians. We don't use black Indians, we use Indians. So my background is Cherokee on my mother and father's side, as well as Blackfoot on my family on Alabama side. I've always knew this as a kid. Grew up a Christian, but even in that, with me knowing that fat Indian in the blood, my ideologies in Christianity was always altered, because what I knew family tradition was and Christianity tradition just never added up. And I had a strict grandma and aunties where they was always on quote unquote black pride, African American pride. So that kind of kept me grounded, even going up through the whole Christianity thing. So drummer at church. So with me being a drummer, knowing the background of drumming from the indigenous perspective or even the African perspective, that always clashed with that Christianity. So that walk led up to me now at 36 years old. Um, I always had that mindset like there's more than what they telling me at church because it was always instilled in me as a kid who I was. So that's kind of where I'm at now. I'm always I try to be a master student, always learning, but never capping off. You got to stay a student, but be a master student. So you can't never master the craft. But you can always master learning. You always learning. The minute you stop learning, you might as well just be 6 feet under. So it's kind of where I'm at with things, and hopefully we could talk today and shed some light on some things and give everybody just a new perspective on things in this country and even the rest of the world.
Right. Cool. So how we gonna start this question out, man? What's the first question that we have for Mr. Purnell?
Well, you mentioned heritage thing. The reason I think it's important because we all kind of, whatever the history truly is, we kind of, quote unquote, black people in America, taught us certain things from birth, from the establishment. If you don't have, pride or understanding of your history within your own household, the state is going to take that narrative and run. And we see evidence of that in America now, how we pretty much proudly, claim that we're black. And what I've learned over time is this has nothing really to do with the color. It's more of a legal thing. Of course. But we still probably, whatever the case is. So that's why I think it's important to have these discussions on, the quote unquote truth. Why it's important. And I guess that's my next question. Why do you think it's important for us to reestablish for everybody, if it's the truth in their own particular heritage, why it's important to reestablish that history?
Well, I think there's a difference between truth and facts. So you could be a Jehovah's Witness, Muslim, whatever, and that's your truth. But a fact can't be argued. The fact doesn't deal with feelings. The fact is unchangeable. That's the concrete evidence. So a lot of people's truth really is lies. So when we're dealing with what you just asked, the fact of the matter, but not which is different than the truth of the matter, but the fact of the matter, the records show, studies show from many colleges in this land and abroad show that we are the real people of this land, that the boats didn't bring us over here. We was here before Columbus. The boats, not really much evidence of the boats according to manifests, because slavery was a business. So it's track records in every county, state, city we live in. There's track records of businesses because they pay taxes. So if you're given the slave story, the boats have to show that they existed. Recently on CNN, like last week, they found a Mayan slave ship, which was never taught at school. Mayans as slaves on a boat, but we was always taught the African thing. So the reason that's important because the problems we have on this land stems from history when we knew we still were Indians and fighting wars and treaties and things like that. So a lot of problems that the black community have stem from our grandparents being made to go to jail or hung to say I'm not an Indian, I'm just a nigga or I'm a Negro. That was law placed. So us now in this generation don't even know it because grandma and them, it was against the law for them to say it, or they ain't want to be with them good old boys and be swinging on the trees. Because we never taught why they would lynch. We was just thought it was, they just don't like black people. Nah, you will lynch. Yeah, they will lynch you if you ran around saying you was Indian.
Change your religion or die type shit.
Yeah. So not being Indian ain't just a thing to say. Like most of us heard our grandma and them say it as a kid. Most black people I think my grandma said somebody then 97% of us heard this growing up. Like grandma and them saying reset, Geechee, whatever the case is. You know what I'm saying? But we never really expounded on it. We just knew it was something from grandma and them time. But regardless of what all the books and records say, your grandparents that's your real truth. They know, they know. So if you're blessed to sit down with an elder in your family that's still with you, ask them what boat you came off a boat, because they was born in the early 1900s. That means their parents or their grandparents came over, so that it's not far off from them. You know, so that's why it's important. Even with COVID and things like that, when you look at the track record of vaccines and disease, you see in school you always taught how they try to wipe out the Indians with disease, smallpox and things like that. History repeats itself. And everything, when you're doing a business transaction, if you deal with stocks, you always look at the history of something to determine the money move or not put your money in. You gotta look at history. So history is important, period. We dealing with issues now that we're not dealing with the root of it. That we trying to chop a tree down, but we're not pulling the roots out the ground. So you chop a tree down, eventually it'll grow back if the roots ain't pulled up. We're not dealing with the roots. So history is the roots. So when you see how they changed your identity and gave you Jesus and all these things, you see why we in the epidemics that we are in today. Because the world won't change until we know who we are. Not as a, and if you are African, cool. But most of the people on this land just not. And that's a problem. It's a problem. Yeah. Dealing with that slavery thing and reparations, that's the problem. Because if you're saying you're African, okay, so which country in Africa is going to help pay your reparations for sending you over here? Reparations, the meaning is damage of war goods. So reparations deal with war. And I think I mentioned this point to you before. What war did Africa have where they lost tens of millions of people sent to America? Because that's what reparations is. Compensation for war damage. What war did they fight? Now, when you look at the Indians, there's tons of wars, tons.
This is nuts.
Yeah. So
You definitely got to put a list of those.
of the wars,
Yeah, we're gonna have to.
there's
drop that
tons
down
of
too.
them.
Yeah,
Tons.
you can look through the timeline.
Yeah.
None of that shit is what was discussed in school.
Like even dealing with like Nat Turner, he was part of a rebellion. Like people just know Nat Turner's story, but they don't understand it was during Indian war time. He from Virginia. Like it was a lot going on in Virginia with Indians. He part of that. Like those narratives they give us in school, they give us like a small piece. But when we look at the Haitian rebellion, that happened first. Nat Turner caught wind of that. How he catch that with no Wi-Fi, no phones? Like channeling energy from across rivers. I don't want to say seas because Haiti's still part of America. But we gotta understand like what was going on. Are these Africans fighting or are these Indians fighting? Then they teach you, oh, the Africans mixed in with the Indians. Yeah, they don't want to give you the real. They want to say we mixed in.
So based on that, wow, what's the big fucking difference? What is the big fucking difference? Whether you African, whether you American. At this point, it's 2021, right?
Yeah.
How do that matter? Okay, why is that important?
Well, if we dealing with wealth, we know everybody, all those countries grabbing wealth. So in order to have wealth, you have to be the owners of the land. So if you don't know that this is your land, we chasing wealth through many different ways, and people are getting to a bag, but that's not. When we talking trillions or billions, we ain't even talking millionaires. When you own the land, you have the real wealth. Because even back then, like we talking 300-400 years ago, we didn't have the fiat currency. It was trading goods. You can't trade no goods if you don't own where the goods come from. You have to be the owner of it. There was no middleman. I'm the man, you the man, what you got. So if you own the land, you have to be from the land to own it.
So with that being said, like, whether or not we agree with who's running the current tribes and such, whether we agree with who's running the tribes now, our government established reservations for them. Ain't that the same thing as you have in life?
Not at all. Not at all.
Why is that? You own the land? You own it?
Nah, it's different. Boy, this could go. Okay, excuse me. So, when we're dealing with reservations, that is when the government removed people from a particular area and say, nah, you gonna stay right here. All right. So my great grandmother, Elsie Span, rest in peace to her. She grew up on a reservation in Alabama. I think she moved away when she was like 14, something like that, and moved to New York City. But her family was placed on a reservation because they were moved when they had the Indian Removal Act in the early 1800s. Moved from her land and placed them there. That my grandma's super dark, nappy hair. She did have the typical ponytails that you see a typical Indian with, but that was really her, But she lived on the reservation. Did not look like the
Current.
John Wayne cowboy and Indian type of Indian.
That's where I was going.
Yeah, she definitely didn't look like that. Nappy hair, but she knew who she was. Grew up like that.
No question.
Yeah. So, but a reservation don't mean you own the land. See, the problem with these other Indians, quote unquote, they don't have documents to say they own the land. What makes you own something is a patent. So there are things called land patents. If you are really from America or Turtle Island or Amexem or all these different terms that this country has had, you have the patent to a land. Just like when you come out with an idea and you patent it, can't nobody take that. There's people that look like me, hundreds of thousands of us who families have land patents. That is the difference between an Indian that looks like me and the John Wayne episode Indians. They don't have land patents. So that's why it's that serious. If you have a patent on the land, and let's say they put a highway through it, because of treaties and things, they supposed to pay you. The government's supposed to pay you taxes because they put a highway through your land.
Okay, so treaty. Mention the treaty. It's like, man, you should just roll it, son. So mention the treaty.
Mm-hmm.
You have the Constitution.
Yes.
The treaties came before the Constitution, right?
Well, Constitution is actually come from the Iroquois Indians. When they say "we the people," that is a whole Iroquois constitution that they mimicked from them. Because you gotta understand, as Indians, we're not the running around naked with a feather in your head. That's that TV stuff. We had real systems, constitutions. We didn't live in teepees like what they show. We had.
What about wigwams?
No, we had whole like apartment complexes. We had kingdoms here, real kingdoms like castles. They have castles in Georgia. It's deep. Like, we're not just the quote unquote stuff you see. Like, we really was running shit. You know what I'm saying?
Man, we're not the mainstream.
We're not the mainstream at all. Not the mainstream at all. Like, real kingdoms here that they didn't emperors here. Running trade from Canada all the way to the bottom of South America, funding the whole other side of the planet of corn, gold, everything. What they tell you they get from Africa, they was getting here. We have gold here. We have palladium, tobacco. I mean,
Iridium.
everything.
That?
Yeah, all that's here. They want to give you the narrative. You from Africa, all your resources are there. We took you from there, but nah, it was here. That's what Columbus and them was coming over here for. Getting permission from their queens and things, dealing with the kings here. So we welcome them with open arms. We thinking we get into the bag and we trading. Then you come over here and kill and things like that. But so when we're dealing with treaties, if you have a patent and there's a treaty, you're compensated because of the violation of the treaty, which is not happening with our people.
Right.
So
and
there's many treaties, not one.
Right.
It depends on the tribe
Yes,
and
tribes.
different things like that.
All the most people always
Yeah, but these treaties are dealing with countries and Indians. That's how you know it's not American government. It'd be like Cherokees in Paris, France.
Right.
Like, it's that big. It's not the government, because the government's not that old, to be honest.
And just to play this point. So, like, we're gonna, like you said, we're gonna throw a link in there about the multiple wars that started it, that created it, and formed it to what it is now.
And the treaties that went with it.
Mm-hmm.
So with that being said, with these wars, in order to conclude a war, it has to be some kind of agreement between the two parties
Exactly.
for the war to be concluded.
Exactly.
So all we hear about is Constitution, the U.S. Constitution.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody talks about what preceded that. Preceded? What happened before that? You know what I'm saying? Like,
Even like,
why do we have to honor that?
why do we have to honor the treaties or?
The treaties that came before.
The bullshit.
Well,
the treaties that came before our quote-unquote Constitution.
well, thing is, when we have that slavery narrative that started with the wars going on. So if we're going to deal with treaties, then you have to recognize the people that's tied to the treaties. So you can already see the game that if I say I'm a Cherokee, right? You gotta understand there's different branches of Cherokees. Like in North Carolina, there's Cherokee, North Carolina, where the casino is at. They don't look like me. Their head chief right now is Chuck Norris looking dude. You know, don't recognize us. Reparations are tied into compensation through treaties and reservations. Allegedly, Martin Luther King was killed for fighting for those treaties in place. So a week after he was assassinated, what was signed, I want to say Lyndon Johnson, signed a Housing Act through civil rights. When you look through the documents, it says Indian Civil Rights Housing Act. Martin Luther King was on to something. You don't see the speeches where he's saying, I'm an Indian, allegedly, but he is saying millions of Negroes are fighting for their own land and the government snatching it away from them. So when did you hear Negroes having their own land in America if we from Africa? And they passed it as Indian housing. Another nickname for the civil rights was Indian civil rights. But when you look at those pictures, I'm only 36, so I'm looking at pictures. But even in the pictures, I don't see the John Wayne people. I see people that look like me with afros and keep hope alive and all that. Those are the Indians. That's what he was fighting for the land, because the land is tied to wealth. And Google isn't a good go-to source for everything, but just Google nicknames for civil rights. Indian civil rights will pop up. So the week after he died, because it was riots all over the country, them savages, them Indians was going crazy. They passed the bill to calm everybody down. So it's housing, public housing stems from that. Who stays in public housing today? Niggas look like me. That's for you. That's a form of reparations. So when you have some people saying, "Oh man, people that stay in the hood, they lazy," I get what you're trying to say, but you don't know. Maybe their grandma and them got tired of fighting, and it's like, "Fine, I'll take this," because we've been fighting for like 700 years. We talk about 400 years. We've been past that. I'm talking 700 years fighting. Some maybe even 800 to 1,000 years. Like we've been fighting for a long time. The Crusade eras, all the way up to today. George Floyd and all that. It's the same fight, you know. So when you talk about the hoods and ghettos, things like that, with government housing, public housing, that's part of the act that Martin Luther King was fighting for. There's really a lot of these other Indians, they get free housing off of your shit because you don't know who you are. That's why it's important to know who you are. There's programs out here for Indians. Some of these tribes, alleged Indians, they get money for their child to go to college. Once they graduate high school, some get one kid to get $250,000. You have some tribes allegedly right now waiting on their money buying Maseratis and things like that. They've interviewed some. What you gonna buy with your money? Maseratis. Ain't nobody talking about college. None of that. It's programs for Indians, but because you don't know who you are, you trying to get it as quote unquote African American, who really has no real standing in government. Our ancestors dealt with government because we had governments. So when you understand that in the terms, you got to be careful what you call yourself. You got to be careful how you fill your paperwork out, because things won't be available to you. It's sitting in there, trillions of dollars is accruing every day. That U.S. debt is that to the Indians because it's the same land. It's our land. But when you don't know it, you're just getting your food stamps. You're just getting your little WIC. But those programs are cool. I grew up on it. But there's more programs out here. Free college, the whole 4 years, free for Indians and things like that. But people don't know about it because they don't know who they are. Because it stopped with grandma because she ain't want to get her head blown off by them boys because you running around the town saying you Indian. That's what happened to Black Wall Street. They got jealous because them Indians was thriving. You gotta remember that stock market crashed in 1929. That's 8 years after Tulsa. Tulsa wasn't the only one, but just dealing with Tulsa. So you gotta think, if America's stock market crashed, that's the Great Depression. What was niggas doing at that time? Thriving. Because we had our own land, our own business. We didn't need that. When you Harlem Renaissance, perfect example. The whole stock market crash. You're seeing all this famine, right? There's other people that don't have my type of melanin struggling. You see the pics. They got tons of movies about this. Gangs in New York, tons of movies. But then you got Harlem Renaissance. In the same city.
The stock, you're right. The stock market
But
is in Manhattan.
your Bumpy Johnsons and all these guys thriving. Something's wrong with that picture. Why niggas ain't suffering? And we just got out of slavery, quote unquote, not too many years before that. 1865 to 1929 ain't even 100 years. That might be 40, 50 years. So how niggas is thriving? They just came from allegedly 400 years of slavery, and they thriving in cities. There's many Harlems. Harlem Renaissance was dealing with Harlem, New York, but actually, I think I want to say Durham was actually called the real Harlem Renaissance. That was the first Black Wall Street, Durham, North Carolina.
Really?
Yes. So Tulsa was just mimicking other places. Some of the leaders in our community, W.D. Du Bois and them, would go take trips there to see this mecca of black business in Durham, North Carolina, before Tulsa. And we had the stock market crash, Great Depression. You learn that in school, but you only see these suffering other people, but you don't see the black people thriving, having fancy cars and suits and they got money and all that type of stuff. Jack Johnson's, all of that, you know. So what you gotta, if we're gonna deal with that slave narrative, they have to tie all that together to make it fit. If we just came out of slavery, we should still be suffering. Like, so when the Great Depression happened, we should have been at the bottom of the bottom, but we at the top. Yeah, so we like, well, our great-great-granddaddy had like 7 businesses during this time, thriving. How? He's driving cars that they say niggas couldn't even get, but they got them. You know, so all over America, not just Harlem. Harlem was just, and most people know that place, but that was, yeah. So you gotta make that make sense. How that happened during the stock market crash. So if you're gonna talk about treaties and things, what's the brother that did he sued he bought the Weather Channel a couple of years back, Byron Adams. Okay, he went against a act that passed that dealt with treaties, the 1865 yeah. So he took it back to that to say you're violating his constitutional right based on 1865. Slaves got freed 1865. So he's dealing with contract law. And if he's going off that, which is off of treaties, allow us to do contract with nations or businesses and things like that. Right. So if slaves got freed in 1865 and we're dumb, we don't know how to read and write, as they say, why would they even give us a act like that? Contract law? Hell, we just shucking and jiving. We don't know. So what they say, why are we dealing with contract law from 1865? Because that was for black people being to be contract law. We barely know how to read and write what they tell us. So why is that even a thing? You know, so treaties, knowing paperwork and treaties is important, because even if you got $1 billion right now, you could have $1 trillion if you knew what your ancestors set up for, especially if you have land patents. There's land patents in the government system allegedly right now sitting there not claimed because other Indians can't claim it because they can't trace back to that person. That's why knowing your genealogy is important. You might have somebody in your family that was born 150 years ago that got 600 acres of land. and we were at about 440 acres and a mule, which a president took back that they don't even teach us. Niggas are still stuck on that, and the president took that back and gave the land back to the original plantation owners. When you figure out who a plantation owner is, nigga look like me. As a plantation owner just means farmer. We think plantation and think that root shit. Plantation means planter. It's a root word in it, plants. So you're the CEO of land that grew a crop. We got the narrative of these other people.
Sharecroppers.
Yeah.
Which that did exist.
Yeah, but then you had plantation owners, like for instance, my family's from Savannah. Savannah has a lot of plantations. Silk plantation owned by a black family. So they'll kill a family off and claim their stuff.
Claim the land.
Claim the land. So when you
Let me just not cut you off before I forget. That's great. The dynamic, we were checking, we discussed Dane Carroll. His movement.
Dane, yeah, shout out to Dane.
And
Yeah,
he had a particular episode. And it's something I gotta get out my fucking head. Like, the whole freedom thing.
Freeman.
That
Yeah,
picture, that painting,
yeah,
that photo that became a painting.
yeah,
The
yeah.
way they change history subtly. You see a photo of children gathered around the building. It says Freedom.
Freeman School.
Freedom School.
Yeah,
The narrative around it is, first of all, if you have a photo that's in color, why present the painting?
right,
Because the photo kind of validates that it's real.
right.
The painting, you can put any narrative.
Exactly.
Same reason why they keep certain photos in black and white. To make you think of a time further back.
Right,
It's not as current.
right.
So I think that particular conversation made me realize how inaccurate the history that we know is. Like freedmen. The freedmen ain't had nothing to do with being free necessarily, or coming out of slavery, which you're a slave and now you're free, so we call it free.
Well,
Deeper than
that painting was, I think, 1847. So it was definitely during quote unquote slavery time.
So
They didn't get free till 65.
right.
So why do you have freed men if slaves weren't getting free till 65?
And what were those children being taught? That's the discussion I want to have.
Okay, I'm gonna use my family.
Let me rephrase it. So you have that narrative in the photo itself. You see the photo, and based on your understanding of these words, you come up with what it's about.
Mhm.
And that's what they know. When we look deep into it, the freedman term don't necessarily mean from slave to free.
Right,
It's a whole different definition, which then puts a whole definition of what a school is, which then you see who the teacher is, you see who the kids are, the information we know now, the information you be digging up. That's the point right there where we need to have a discussion. How could they have changed the whole narrative of what this thing is to where, because you always hear like, it can't all be made up. You know what I'm saying? It can't just be all made up. It has to be close to the truth. It has to be some piece of truth in it. But no, that picture shows me you kill the elders, the libraries, the elders, which are the libraries,
facts.
and take the kids and teach them whatever the fuck you want to teach them. And they have nobody to go and verify this information with.
Well, when we look at what the curriculum was, it was not math, ABCs, 1, 2, 3s, this color's red. It wasn't none of that. They was teaching them religion, Christianity. Those schools that's what they were ordained for. So those teachers were actually priests, Jesuits, allegedly, missionaries, allegedly. They weren't school teachers, allegedly. They were priests.
Wow.
So what do priests do? They teach their truth on their doctrine, ideology. So that when we think in school and you see kids, we're thinking, oh, that's like kindergarten. Nah, it was the school teaching them allegedly religion, in particular Christianity. That was what those schools were. Even when we deal with terms like superintendent, we dealing with the school system. When you look up the history of superintendent, it was designed to have Indians learn what they wanted us to learn. We was not learning how to count and things like that. We already knew how to do that. It was teaching Christianity. It was when you teach a certain religion, it's mind control. And it wasn't easy. It's not like we just sat there and was like, oh, come teach that. We was busting heads. But when they kill off your warriors, and now you're kind of left like, okay, let's go ahead and do this. Yeah, it wasn't like we just let them do it. But those freedmen schools were religious schools.
You look at it, it's not hard to.
Allegedly.
That
Answering all
concept.
the questions that's in my head. You answered everything that's in my head, so I can't even ask the question.
Well, can we equate it to today?
Of
That
course,
whole thing?
superintendents. Don't we have superintendents in each county in the country that controls the curriculum, right?
What about curriculum?
Okay, same thing.
Like,
Like you have, we all have children. They teach your kids about the anatomy of a rock, right? But not the anatomy of their melanin on their body. They'll just ask pigment, but there's a whole
like the crayon is.
science behind why you have that pigment. Why is that not part of
See,
curriculum?
man,
You gonna
it's too
dissect
easy,
a
man.
frog?
So, okay, not to cut you off the
Okay.
I mean, it's right in line. So,
Cool,
melanin,
cool.
what is it? Okay, now what?
Well, I mean, I can say what it is and then go deeper.
Okay, do that.
So melanin is basically, first of all, everyone on this planet has melanin, first of all. But there's different types of melanin. A brother like myself, you see it, this is eumelanin. Other people don't have eumelanin. So everybody has melanin, even the Caucasian people, animals. But I have, what you guys see is eumelanin. I'm not black, I'm brown, by the way. This shirt is black. But melanin, the scientific term for that is carbon. Yes, humans breathe out carbon, but we're a whole walking being carbon. It shows in our skin. The obvious things, we could sit in the sun, you don't have no problem. Certain people sit in the sun and they burn up like vampires, that's the simple stuff. Allegedly. This thing right here is just the outward result, what's inside. I have a thing called a pineal gland. Everybody look like this. We all have them. Everyone has them, but ours are a lot larger, and that allows us to be creative. When they talk about that soul that we got with everything we do, hence Taylor Soul Food. We cook a certain way, we play sports a certain way, we rap, we walk a certain way. That comes from that pineal gland. That's that God body right there. That keeps us creative. This melanin is like that suit Black Panther had. It's impenetrable. It's so good that they want to allegedly kill you to make products out of it. Lipstick. Actually, they making batteries now, charging them with melanin, allegedly. You're worth more dead than alive, allegedly.
Go back to the graphene.
So yeah, there's so many. Yeah, the melanin is the God body, allegedly. That's
So-
where we at.
All right. So we've had discussion, about how that relates to. Okay, you're saying melanin is carbon.
Yeah.
We
Mark of the beast, as they say, 666. It's not a mark of the beast, it's a mark of man. That's actually what it says in the Bible. 6 protons, 6 neutrons, 6 electrons. They tell you that's the devil number, of course. You the devil to them, of course. It's the anatomy of man, and we the original man.
So with that being said, damn it. So with that being said, we in America have been privy to a certain
Curriculum.
no.
Superintendent.
Certain
Dynamic.
certain agenda, I guess, or certain was presented as fact from this whole carbon emissions.
Oh yeah,
You know, so we equate melanin to carbon, and we equating carbon to being the problem, CO2, which is
We or they?
oh they,
Oh,
the
okay.
they.
Yeah, you can watch
That's why I
that.
say in America.
I
I
don't
can't
have
speak
no
for
problem.
other countries, but in America, for the last 10 years, 15 years.
So
Well, that's
what's
actually
your
world.
question?
That's a world problem.
Okay, go ahead.
So
That's a world problem, not just an American.
well, I'm just saying what we hear. I don't know what they hear outside, but here we have certain people that are pushing it. Bill Gates is such. Bill Gates being the most popular,
Uh-huh.
but he said on multiple occasions
Mhm.
the issues we have on the country, on the world, on the globe,
Carbon emissions.
it's carbon emissions. That is the ultimate problem.
Ultimate.
So he has his equation where he, multiplies this times that times that times that
Mhm.
equals this.
Yeah.
And carbon is the one thing in that equation that can
That
change.
is messing up the whole planet, right?
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, what do you think about that whole thing?
Before
How does that equate to?
and
melanin and carbon?
before you answer that, to add to that, or maybe to simplify it for me, talk about what is emissions.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? Is it carbon?
Okay, so carbon emissions is basically too much carbon being released into the world. It's a bad thing, quote unquote. So
Synthetically
emission,
or naturally?
both, all the way around. Carbon is
That's kind of
causing
the point.
global warming. Carbon is causing the ozone layer to get thin. All these things that we were taught in school.
So
Carbon
with-
is the problem, and we got to get rid of it.
With you equating scientifically melanin to carbon,
Yeah.
how does that whole thing go with the whole carbon emissions thing? In your mind, in your opinion.
Well, allegedly, Bill Gates had a talk about carbon emissions and poverty in the same sentence. So if carbon is just an element, a gas or compound, whatever, what does that have to do with poverty? He said carbon emissions and poverty need to be dealt with. Those two different.
Yeah, don't have nothing-
What poverty got to do with an element?
That's one of the elements that
Niggas
not
in the hood
discussed in
don't
the
care about no compounds. They dealing with poverty. So what those two things have to do with each other? He said if we can eliminate allegedly carbon emissions and poverty, basically the world would be a better place. Then he turns around when he says it, he says through vaccines and other sources, we can get the population down to around 500 million. So it's basically too much people putting out carbon. So we have to get allegedly get the population down through vaccines. It sound like I heard him say.
And that's what I'm asking. You said you talking about the synthetic carbon or the natural?
He
Because
is
I
talking.
would say
well,
the
natural
carbon that comes out of cars would be synthetic.
Yeah, but he didn't deal with that. When he said it.
that's how he wanted to sound.
When he said it, he had a picture up of a painting of black children on it when he said it. And he said we have to get rid of carbon emissions and poverty. And there's a picture of little kids on there that look brown like me.
Basically, get rid of niggas.
And then people just start laughing like, oh, yeah. And he said he needs hundreds of companies to back it. So when we see what's being pushed, that's company dollars pushing the jab. And you got to get that jab. You know? I've seen a particular governor for a particular state, not gonna say state, on the news say we need the black and the brown community in this city and state to get these shots. Y'all messing it up.
Texas,
I'm not gonna say the state.
Georgia.
It was somewhere in the planet, in America. Came out of his mouth and said it.
Mississippi.
I seen a rapper look like he got a nice little check to run around and remix his whole song. Back the thing up to vax that thing up. Who paid you for that?
Truth, man.
Yeah, like you can see a whole agenda dealing with propaganda. We gotta understand we're still in war. You can't have a successful war without propaganda that controls the media. So the propaganda is the jazz. So it's biochemical warfare. We just don't see it like that. But when you understand that this country has been at war 97% of this time of being called the United States, nothing stopped. We might stop for a few months and then something else happens.
Hold up, say that one more time, real quick.
The United States is allegedly being in war 97% of its existence. 97%. But we barely had a break in this land. But when you talk the American dream, you think you catching a break when you got your good job, you make your little salary, you got your house with the white picket fence and the dogs, you think you good. So you're immune to the war going on. That's any race of people. Understand?
So let me. What?
You think every war? I look at it like that. I think the media is probably the biggest war going on. How do you feel about that? Do you feel like
I feel like media is
all
the
of it
biggest
is
tool to push to help a
or
war.
is all of it, working together?
Of course, everything is working together. When you see who run the media, you can tell.
Right, and that goes back to what you were saying, what we were saying earlier about Martin Luther King
Yeah,
speaking how he was speaking.
yeah.
We didn't control the media to put it out there.
One of his famous speeches is "I have a dream."
Everybody, right?
Every color, creed know that speech, but we forget about the other one he had,
Because we don't have
where
the
he
footage.
said, "I felt like I led my people into a burning house."
We don't have that footage. They got all the footage.
So you gotta think about that.
I got this speech.
And why out of all the civil rights leaders, why they
It's coming
push
out.
him so hard?
100 years later,
Right. That's all.
It's like you kill him and make a mockery of him every year. You gotta celebrate his birthday. Y'all really bodied him.
All right, so you mentioned comfortable.
American dream company.
Yeah, how is it possible for us to be in as intense a war as we in right now? But you look outside and you can't see it. How is that possible?
You say you look outside and say that last
Can't
part?
see it.
Can't see what?
How are we able to be as comfortable with it as we are
Oh, okay.
on these landscapes
Okay.
and the war is as intense?
can I say
How
something
are
to that?
niggas able to not? How is it possible? Not saying that niggas is trying to not see it. How is it possible for our society to allow us to not be able to see the war that's going on?
I think we kind of mentioned that when I said convenient confusion.
Convenient
Now
confusion.
go ahead and answer that. Convenient confusion. Remember that term.
Okay, so going through history, where you look at what the people were fighting for, then the fight went from physical fighting to governments were set in place to make you stop fighting. So if I have a wife and kids and we out here at war, that's like Revolutionary War, Civil War era. Even in that, we was taught it was the Union and the South. Wow. So we taught the Confederacy was racist white people. The Union was helping free the slaves. But history actually shows that the Confederates was Indians that when I go on with the treaties and the documents in place. For instance, I'm Cherokee, but I know I'm what Cherokee? I'm Chickamauga Cherokee. That's that Confederate flag that we know. That's the Chickamauga sign of Indians saying, fuck all this, we finna kill. Even you might be Indian, but you detriment to to all the people. You gotta go.
You said that the Confederate flag.
Confederate flag, contrary to popular belief, is the flag of my ancestors, Chickamauga Cherokee.
Which means that one.
Yes, this one right here. This one right here. It's actually saying on it, Chickamauga. They be your rebels. Chickamauga Cherokee. That's actually an original picture right there. Chickamaugas they would be like your gangs today, or when the gang culture came out, they would be those policing their neighborhoods and things like that. And yeah, you might be Cherokee, but you going.
So they stole that too. God damn it, man.
Yeah. So we in the South, when we see them things waving, we think, oh, that's a racist person. You don't even know that's your grandma and them probably flag.
Oh, you put them on over there.
It might be one over there.
Yeah, do the own spot.
So dealing with that comfortability, I'm trying to tie that together. So when you descend from some people like that, and you watching them being killed off, and you like, you kill me, but don't hurt my babies. So they like, oh, I'm not gonna kill you. I'm gonna hog tie your daughter and rape her in front of you to make you. So when you have a lot of that going on, you're gonna say, all right. Where we need to sign? There's too many bodies. What we gotta do? We gotta kill the warriors off first.
So you
Gotta
feel,
kill
so
the
you
warriors.
say that that's probably our
The comfortability we have now
weakest
stems
point.
from
That's
that.
that's what makes us a little weak. Our
Got
love
tired
and
of fighting.
concern
Yeah.
for
For
our
loved ones.
I've been saying
You say kind of weak.
that's our weak spot. Kids, our loved ones.
It's about the approach of the motherfucking.
I mean, I don't
People like,
knock it.
take me, don't hurt my kids.
I don't knock it, but at the
They're
same
gonna say,
time,
oh, I see the weak spot.
right? And
I'm
they
gonna
use
kill
it
your whole
against you.
family. Yeah.
That's nasty.
And they still might do it anyway after you sign.
That's nasty.
So if you kill the warriors out, it was so bad. We know about scalping in those movies. They scalping. That was actually a decree that the government did. You had $5. $5 was a lot in the 1800s. Even up to $20 for the scalps. The picture we see the little horse hailing. Them scalps had afros on them, and they turn that into your county officials, and you get $5 to $20 per scalp. So when you see a black person running around, you Indian boy? No, sir, I ain't no Indian. Because you say they're Indian, they scalping you. And your kids, all of that. So you gotta understand, during wartime, people suffering. There's casualties of war, but everybody's not warriors. You send your warriors out. You got your peaceful people at home. When the warriors is getting slaughtered, now we were slaughtering too, but when you got countries fighting against you, coming over, that's what we gotta understand. We keep saying government. The government is ran by other countries. When you have countries swarming,
Reinforcement.
yeah, and other
What you gonna do?
quote unquote other melanated people that look like you fighting against you, you know, shout out to the Moors, but y'all was on that too, helping these people fight us. Yeah, you like, okay, they taking my babies, anything. I don't want to fight no more. So that comfortability that he talking about stems from, I don't want to fight no more. Where can we agree? So then things start passing because we civilized people, we smart. We know, okay, we're gonna have this contract, this treaty, whatever. That's gonna keep us. We done with that. So as time keep going and new things keep being passed, then they hoodwink you when they start distributing land. You're like, wait, they having like Dawes Rolls and all these rolls that quote unquote Indians are on.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like,
And then they have one when 1865 slaves got freed. There's a Dawes Roll that was overturned in 1865. My wife's family is actually on there. There's a Cherokee Roll. He hears about land being distributed to Cherokees. So you get on there to protect what you have too, not just to get land, to protect it. So they overturn that whole roll. You ain't no Cherokee, you a Negro. So when you're a Negro, you don't have no ties to the land. And now you like, what I'm gonna do now? Then they do redlining and all these things to keep you back from getting your own shit. So then you just get comfortable like,
yeah. So,
let me just vote. I don't want to fight no more. What we gotta do?
What does it mean? Like, I look at the list of wars, and like you said, 97% of the time. The fact that it wasn't just one long war
Nah.
lets me know that, like I said, you have a war, you come to whatever agreement, treaty, truce, whatever the case is. What does it say? That it's war.
Sound like they were breaking treaties right after breaking treaties, right after breaking treaties, right after
That's what I'm
breaking
saying.
treaties.
That's
All
the only way
wars are based off greed. You want something that kingdom or country got. That's what all war is. It's not you stepping my foot or nothing. I want whatever resource you got. So why Africa don't have all of this in their documents, but why America got so much countries coming over here in different parts of the land that's known for gold or whatever that region is for, the trees or the timber, the whatever. You know, that's what war is based off. I want that commodity you have.
I ain't willing to give up my shit.
Yeah, so we gonna fight, and then we come to an agreement, You might even do a business transaction. Okay, I'll give you 10% a year. You pay me my royalties or whatever, tax, whatever the case may be.
Why
But
you
then
pay
somebody
the double?
violates it. You know what I'm saying? Slavery is a commodity source. So when we even looking at that, it was not the it wasn't chattel slavery what we were taught with coming on the chains and feeding us slop. It was domestic servitude. So most documents, census records, you could look on some slave records, slave schedules is what they call them. And so you see slave, you automatically think some chicken watermelon dumb talking person. When the census might say slave, but you was just a servant, and you could be my son. I'm teaching you my trade. I'm a shoeman. I make shoes. My son is signed as an apprentice for 7 years, 15 years. On paper, when those curators coming through doing the census, you like, how many's in your household? Me, my children, and my servants. My son is my servant. I'm teaching him my trade. They gonna mark that as slave. Most of slavery on this land was domestic servitude, not chattel slavery.
So that's how
The
you
chattel
use one
slavery
word.
we had was from prisoners of war. Again,
And that's why the
fights.
etymology is so important.
Gotta learn the
Because
etymology
you can
of
use
words.
one word and have it mean multiple things throughout history.
Yeah.
I read a word now, it's not necessarily the same words it was.
How many words we got in English language that, like two, depending on how you spell it, it could be the number two, it could be like me and you two, and like going to the store. But you just say it, some person is just think the one way.
When you talk about like compound, like you have a complicated word that has multiple origins of the separate parts of the word,
Right.
and how English is the language that surface anyway, because it's so malleable. You can move, change it around and shit.
So what you just saying
Go
like
and
that,
symbol and shit.
when we deal with carbon, and they saying carbon emissions, their science, when I say their, other people that don't look like us, science says that is the God particle. That's what make these people godlike. So if you want to get rid of carbon, it sounds like you kind of like I hate to do this, but like a devil and God fight. You want to get rid of God because you're the devil. You want to have carbon emissions. You want to eliminate that. He didn't say to 50%. He said to 0. That's not alleged. He said it.
Eugenics.
Yeah, so you want to get rid of God's people? Now, that could be touchy with people, but I'm saying, based on what their studies say, that melanin is the God particle, so you're God's people.
Just like that.
If you don't have that, you're not a real human. And human, dealing with etymology, is hue, color, H-U-E, M-A-N. They hyphenated, took the E out. So that means color of man. That's this. This is all over the world. We breathe it. It's in the plants. We one chlorophyll away from being green. We so much like a plant. That's why we need to eat more healthier, because that gives us life. You know what I'm saying? Or we could just sit in the sun and get vitamins like plants do. That's why our hair grows like this and not fall down like stringy. It grows up in coils like an electrical current. You're receiving from what God made for you. You could get your vitamins without eating. You could go sit outside and get these vitamins.
So with the God part,
The God part.
this last thing, just to connect everything.
Mm-hmm.
So when we're talking about that whole carbon emissions thing,
Mm-hmm.
we're talking about the God part.
Mm-hmm.
Then we're talking about all of these quote unquote sun, all of these projects they got going on,
Mm-hmm.
where they're supposedly looking for the God particle, the Higgs boson, and all that shit. But then they kind of let shit out every once in a while where, it's more about them trying to figure out what holds all this shit together so they can isolate it and control the world.
Well, they figured it out. That's why they have carbon emissions to 0. That's the problem. We're going to dig around and they're not just digging in the ground to look for that. They pulling up bodies, putting them in the Smithsonian, doing tests on them, all that, because the carbon emissions is the problem. So when you see what that means, like, we control everything. Everything revolves around us. where they say he got the whole world in his hand. That's us. Everything. The world is how it is because we're not right. If they eliminate us, they gonna be going too. I had a lady of the Caucasian persuasion tell me and my wife to my face that they come from us allegedly, and they want to beat us. That's why they love our men and things like that. Allegedly, she told me that out her own mouth. In Gastonia, shout out to Gastonia. Yeah, and said we want everything y'all got. It's like even when y'all walk, like we everything about y'all. She said, and they know that. That's why you have the ones that love the shit out of you and want to make babies with you, and then you got the ones that like die. We gotta exterminate them. So because they got money, they on that exterminate side.
It's one of those.
Yeah. So that CERN and everything ties around you because we're the gatekeepers of the earth. That's African culture, Indian culture. We all have that one common thing. We're the gatekeepers of here. So we're letting them just go in our grounds and dig and try to penetrate these atmospheres, and we not supposed to let them do that. We wasn't at one time, so they got us calm right now. But I think it's starting to shake.
Supposed to let them do that.
Nah, this our planet. We just letting them taint with it. This our Mother Earth. We the gatekeepers of this. We the original man. Why we let them do this stuff?
You saying that white people ain't supposed to ski and shit?
Now without our permission, technically.
So you mean to tell me that the dude with the dick and balls rocket, he was supposed to be going up in there?
Nah, man. That's all part of the agenda too. I deal with stocks, so I know when Virgin Mobile Virgin Galactic, the rich guy allegedly flew out there. Richard Branson. He allegedly flew out there, right? Now everybody was like, "Oh, this stock gonna go to the moon because they went to space." The next day, I'm in the stock market. That joint just plummeted. And they had news like that. You would think everybody money would just follow that. Why would that stock plummet? And y'all just flew to the tip of the earth last night. You would think that stock would flew. That joint just
Why you think it did that?
because they ain't go out there. It's like every
So
time
you
they
didn't
go
tell
out
me
there, it's
all
like they
along-
hit something. It's like
You trying to
something
say,
blocking
like,
it.
when they were showing the CGI shit, that's kind of telling us that it wasn't real.
Yeah, Neil Armstrong ain't been out there.
How
None of
you
that.
see the shit take off, and then all the views from then on is computer shit.
Now think about this. You gotta use common sense. If you in an airplane, you in high elevation, so your ears pop, right? So you might chew some gum or whatever the case may be. Now, if you're going past that point, if your ears are popping, what do you think that's doing to your brain going to space? Like your joints should probably explode, right? Like on movies when they coming back in the atmosphere, it's on fire, right?
Right.
So if you're going out, it wouldn't be the same effect.
That's why they ain't never left.
You don't ever see it past a certain point. The video change or whatever the case may be. You can't leave that thing, man.
That's getting some-
Allegedly, there was a guy in the 40s who went to the Antarctica and wasn't supposed to, and he seen trees and
Forest and shit.
kingdoms over there in the 40s allegedly. Huh?
In Antarctica.
Antarctica, there wasn't no ice. There's a nice wall blocking that in. It's like, kingdom there? There's a castle? There's a vacant castle? So
That's why they want nobody going there.
he died shortly after.
I'm sure he did.
This is in the 40s. But
Yeah,
yeah,
you don't hear about people making trips over.
yeah.
So
He's seeing grass out there. So. And Mayan ruin looking type buildings.
like civilization.
I got one more question before we end this. How would you say people could go by? What's a easy, convenient way for people to go by finding their lineage?
Great question.
Go through the government records, because government records you can't really fault those. You could start by
Like courthouse.
you can go to the local court, wherever your family from. You could go on. Thankfully, we have internet now. You could go online. These courthouses, these county vital statistics. All these places have your family lineage. You start with your parents, find their parents, and just keep going. And I guarantee most of y'all, some people are from Africa. Cool, love y'all too. But y'all gonna keep going and see your family just from the same either the same state, city, or they move from one to the other, you won't find that slave ship they came off. Now you might find some family who was owning ships as merchants, and you be like, when that happened, you know? But go through the government records, because one thing to prove by Indian, they say there's no DNA test, because it's correct. You can't prove the Indian by DNA. So when you hear these people saying I'm 1/4 Choctaw, you can't. You can't prove that. You have to go through the records, because they have records of all of us. Side note, most religious organizations got your family records. The Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints got it. They got more records than
even your home
Mormons.
church should have something.
Actually, a lot of our ancestors used to keep births and deaths in the Bible, in the old Bibles back in the day. Those are in government records. I was doing some for my wife family this morning and seeing it. So, for a simple way, y'all could, we in South Carolina, you could just play on Google South Carolina Vault. It's gonna pull up a virtual vault, because some courthouses got burnt down allegedly, and the records are allegedly lost, but they in these vaults. You know, it's not that hard. Just start with talking to your elders first, because they know. You know what I'm saying? And then take what they give you and get on the internet and just start playing it. You can use the ancestries and things like that .com.
Right.
Don't do the DNA test, because you're gonna see Africa, this, Nigeria, Congo.
So, what percentage accuracy are these DNA tests?
According to what they say on their disclaimers, less than 1% accurate.
It's not high at all.
But they
Listen.
selling it though.
Selling it like hotcakes.
$2,000.
People, that's changing people's life. Like, yo, I'm Irish.
And the
nigga.
thing is, when you testing, you have to test 2 living beings. So if you're saying I'm from Nigeria, like most of those tests will say, what person you digging up to match them with me? They dead. Like who you matching that up with? So when you do DNA to say if that's your child, you get the swab from the child and the daddy, or somebody related to the daddy or the mom. Living beings, you gotta test living with living. You
Oh,
can't.
you mean as far as the DNA test for like
That, yeah.
maternity?
So if you're telling me my people descend from Nigeria, you're saying a landmass. Okay, what people y'all digging up? Because then that's illegal. Y'all just digging up bodies, excavating bodies for DNA. That's there's too many holes in it.
So
That's
what
why
do
they
they-
say it's less than 1%
So
accurate.
why they asking for everybody's DNA with these different little?
Well, that's a bag. That's money. DNA test is money.
No, I'm saying. I've been noticing they trying not just DNA tests, different stuff where they just want your fucking DNA.
Oh yeah. That goes back to the
Information.
testing of the melanin. You worth more dead than alive, allegedly. So if they could get a piece of your blood through these plasma centers in the hood, or these abortion clinics, even the doctor's office, and they pulling a lot of samples. You're like, I need all that for that.
Right.
You can read. People don't read before they sign. You read that stuff. They sell stuff to other third-party sources all the time. It's on there. Even if you download the app, it'll say, "Do you mind if we? Do you allow you sign a consent that we could maybe sell your information to third-party sources?" They do that with apps and your blood.
Yeah, everything.
Yeah.
Everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, in order for you to do a transaction, you giving them something.
Look at
Especially
look at Henrietta. She got the
Henrietta Lacks.
yeah. Her family don't get
suing
nothing for
again.
that.
They suing like that.
Yeah, she been dead for like 60 years, and they still using her cells to do stuff with. Hence, she's called the immortal cell. That melanin.
Yeah, she just one of
Indian sister, by the way, too. I think I wouldn't say she was her family from Virginia or something like that. But yeah, it's deep, man. Too much to tie in one in an hour.
Yeah, we definitely gonna do this again, man. I think we got a whole lot.
Man, we appreciate you coming.
Thank you for
Appreciate you
having me.
doing that. You got any websites or anything you want to promote while you're here?
I would just promote doing your genealogy, going through vital statistics. That's the most important thing that matters right now. Because all the other subject matters we talk about stem from you got to know who you are first, so you know what battles to pick. Vital statistics. Any city that you from, or you know your family from.
Do you feel comfortable, kind of, 'cause this one thing is safe. You live it. Do you want to kind of go into the reason that you know this information, as far as where to go and what to do? You want to get into that, or you want to?
Yeah.
Like
You mean-
you ain't saying it just because you read it on the website?
No, well, I knew because my grandparents. That's the biggest website you could ever get, library. I just, as I became older and started learning things as a seeker of knowledge, and we've been blessed with the internet, and knowing that my family lost certain lands and things, I just started doing the digging to see what can I do to help my family. Then when I did it, it was like, oh, a lot of families might do that. So yeah, that's how that goes.
We definitely appreciate you, man.
Appreciate you for having me,
Hopefully
brother.
we can do it again.
Yes, sir.
You know,
Yes, sir.
right here
Yes, sir.
at Taylor Soul Food,
Yes, sir.
688
Albright Road.
Albright Road. Y'all
Rock
check
Hill.
them out, man. Hey, save the children, man.
Peace and love, y'all.
Definitely.